Morning Glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. If you're watching Special Report on Friday night, my guest, Bret Baier, threw a new campaign casino question at the panel. And the question is Joe Biden going to be the nominee? Good morning, Bret. I know you came up with that question. I am curious. Did you know the Wall Street Journal poll was coming out when you put that question on Candidate Casino?
I did not. And, it just bubbled up as something that people were talking about. And I figured to get the panelists to weigh in with their dollars on Candidate Casino to see how they stood. I think that poll is shocking, but it does track what we've seen in other polls about the president being too old, even among Democrats, in numbers north of 70%.
Yeah, this is the key paragraph. And this poll was done, by the way, by a Democratic pollster named Michael Bosian and a Republican pollster, Tony Fabrizio. So it's pretty down the middle. Although the candidates are only 3 years apart, Trump and Biden, 73% of voters said they feel President Biden is too old to seek a second term, compared with 47% of those who said the same of the 77-year-old former President Trump. 2/3 of Democrats said Biden was too old to run again. I think that's news, Bret. Do you?
Yes, 100%. And I think that, what does it transpire to become? Obviously Democrats are fretting about it. You saw on the Sunday shows a lot of pundits on the Democratic side really worried, it seemed, openly about specifically that poll and how the president does against former President Trump in a head-to-head matchup. And I don't know what's going to happen, but, your bet of $90 that he's not going to be the nominee, I think is hedging more towards where people are who are in the know.
Yeah, I cannot imagine people who know anything about being the commander-in-chief voting for President Biden. I can see a lot of people voting for a Democrat because they don't like Donald Trump. But energy in the executive is the number one thing that Hamilton wanted. And the president, God love him and pray for him, he's just old, Bret. I don't know that he could play a round of golf. Do you think he could play a round of golf?
I don't know. I'm sure he can. But, those images of the president on the beach do nothing for the president's, portraying vitality. And then you get to the speeches that are teleprompter speeches, most of them, where he's not hitting the mark at all. And in fact, there's always something in one speech that we all say, wow, didn't know he was going to do that.
Now, I try and compare fairly by silo. In the radio business, some people go on until they're 75. And even we had one host in L.A. who made it to 80, but he got it pulled off on 9/11 because he botched it up. I don't think there's a single anchor in television who is 80 years old. Andrea Mitchell might be getting close, but that's midday on MSNBC, and she's a pro. Are you aware of anyone at Fox who's on the air who's 80 years old, Bret?
Well, Brit Hume.
Brit's 80? I can't believe that. Wow.
I know. We can't either. But
I want to be that 80.
He looks great for 80. But he is, and he acknowledges, he works 100 days a year and has a big calendar in his office, and he has a big Sharpie that he marks down 100 days. But he's obviously a voice and a mind that we want in the mix. But he'll say that he's changed in how he approaches things and how he thinks about things, and he's one of the biggest critics of the president in his current state.
Yeah, Brit can still play 18 and can probably still beat 90% of the people who are listening right now. So I want people, don't give him strokes. It's like Dick Hauser, my buddy, and don't give him strokes. So sure. Bret, as this gets closer and closer, how will it be covered? Because I don't know that the White House press, other than Peter, even raises the question often.
No, I think that these polls, though, are starting to produce more questions about this, and then the visible, reaction to some of those speeches. I don't know where it's going to go. I do know that there seem to be more and more Democrats that are kind of in the wings and waiting to see how this transpires. I think that, the president's not campaigning. He's not doing a lot of interviews. We ask every week and have since he won South Carolina as a candidate, but we haven't gotten an interview yet. And I think, he's just not doing those. And he's not doing a lot of rallies. He's not doing a lot of campaigning. So, at some point, it's going to come to a head.
Bret, off the top of your head, can you recall even one modestly combative interview with President Biden in which the questioner got to ask 4 or 5 or 6 follow-up questions on anything? Because I can't come up with one.
I don't think there's one. I really don't. I mean, early on he had a town hall. Maybe there were a couple of challenging questions, but then they kind of moved on. So I actually don't think there's been an interview that has probed and followed up on his actual answers. You're right.
Now this takes me to. Go ahead.
The other thing is what company is going to have a 82-year-old CEO and choose to hire that person to be CEO? There is not a company that is choosing.
There's only private investment firms like Carl Icahn and people like that who are running their own money, and Warren Buffett. And even Warren Buffett isn't running his own money anymore. He hired a couple of vice presidents. It just doesn't happen. Nobody does. Right. The liability is too high. Now, Bret, in terms of no labels, I asked Admiral Stavridis earlier today if he'd talked to him, and he admitted he talked to him a couple of times. But I'm trying to come up with a ticket that would actually be viable in my mind, just as a matter of conversation on the radio. I can't think of one. It would require a Republican in office, not Governor Hogan, who's a friend, not Senator Romney, who would then be former Senator Romney if he were to take that job, or he might be finishing out his term. I can't think of one Republican in office who would take that job. Can you?
In office, no. I mean, I no, because there's not a Republican that I think is going to back away from and step in front of the party like that. I mean, Mitt Romney potentially could, I suppose, but he's running for Senate in Utah again.
Yeah, I really do not think it's viable. And if you put a Democrat at the top, just drains from Joe Biden. It's got to be a Republican Democrat, and I can't come up with a Republican, and Larry Hogan doesn't do it. So all the effort and time and money that's going into that, is that misspent time, effort, and money, in your opinion?
Well, these guys say they're going to get it on every ballot, and they're ticking down states where they're actually getting on ballots. Could there be a Manchin Huntsman? Could there be I don't know if it's going to – I don't see how it's successful in the current environment. However, there will be a hunger for something else if it is a Biden-Trump battle again. There will be. And
there is only one Republican who comes to mind who might be willing to do it and who would be viable, and that would be Governor Glenn Youngkin if former President Trump got the nomination, and if no labels was viable, you could see Glenn Youngkin teaming up with a Stavridis or somebody like that and being viable. But I don't think he's going to. I like your phrase. They have to put themselves in front of the party. It's a killer of a career if you intend to have a career, right?
As a Republican, yeah. Yeah, I think so. And remember, there's also the down-ballot implications and what that means for, control of the Senate, control of the House. All of it is, party-centric. And, I think there may be a possibility if it's Trump versus Biden again, but again, it's still a long shot. You gotta run the gauntlet.
Have any Democrats said to you off the record that they're worried about the down ticket effects of President Biden? Because I know he got 80 million people to show up in 2020, but I don't know that the fragile Joe Biden can get 80 million people to go to the polls, even if it's Donald Trump.
A lot of worry. Privately, it's like a 4-alarm fire. And they are pinning a lot of hopes on the issue of abortion and some of those referendums in different states and swing states. But if you don't have a strong top of the ticket, it's really tough.
Yeah, I want people to mark it down on Friday. You brought it up for the first time I've seen anyone bring it up in Candidate Casino, and then the Journal poll came along. It is the issue for Democrats. Bret Baier, always a pleasure talking to you. Have a great week. Everyone's back to work inside the Beltway, including Bret Baier, who never took a vacation, actually. So thank you, Bret.